Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Deltana 55211-UL 26D door viewer. This is a door viewer. This is UL listed for use on fire-rated doors, which would be mandatory if you had a fire-rated door. You'd certainly want to order the UL version, not the 55211, which is not listed. Inherently the same product. There's no physical difference, except that the difference in the fact that it's not listed and does not bear evidence of its listing is the difference, and what makes all the difference between this being permissible on a fire-rated door and the non-UL listed version not being permitted. So before we get into more of the UL stuff, this is a door viewer. This is available in lots of different finishes, and let's go over them now. This is the 26D, which means this bezel and the inside trim. That's going to be shown in a satin chrome finish, 26D satin chrome. Now the other finishes that are available are going to be US3 for polished brass. They'll do a CR003, which they call a lifetime brass. It's a different chemical process of creating the brass plating that makes the finish all but impervious to fatigue and failure in an exterior environment. If you have an outside door and you're going to put a polished brass door viewer, put the lifetime brass, because the bezel will pit and fatigue and fail eventually. So I'd suggest the lifetime brass. Antique brass is US5. US10B is oil rub bronze. US15 satin nickel. US15A antique nickel. US19 for black, US26 polished chrome, and then US26D for satin chrome. So lots of different finishes available. There is some information down below this video showing us the dimensional properties. It'll work on doors that are 1 3/8 minimum. That makes sense. Out to 2 1/4, they say, and let's unthread that. With a max extension of 2 5/16. So that would mean any door that you're really going to install this onto, certainly fire rated, being 1 3/4, most likely, although it could be 1 3/8, that is possible. That'll be no problem for a 2 1/4 inch thick door at its maximum. The outside, 1 3/16. The inside, 3/4 inch, basically. It looks a little heavy on that. View is 200 degree. Which is part and parcel of why the unit is large to begin with. It is a large viewer. You're going to see viewers when they hit 200 degree, 190 degree will be physically greater. They will have a larger diameter required to drill through the door. They say that the shaft diameter is 9/16, which is 0.5625. When I put my caliper on this, it tells me it's 0.625. So more than 9/16. 1930 seconds perhaps. So be mindful. You're going to have to drill a little bit larger hole than what they're saying there. Glass lens. They say that it's made of solid brass. I have no reason to doubt that. It does appear to have a very nice architectural type finish. My magnet tells me it's not ferrous, so that certainly doesn't disqualify it from being brass, right? Okay. So I'd say that it would be indeed brass. Easy to install on any door. It is easy, not without its pitfalls. Before we go and get into installation, if you have a fire-rated door, absolutely order the UL version. It is going to not only bear the physical proof of its UL listing, so that if or under the duress of a fire door assembly inspection audit, the inspector or authority having jurisdiction can literally remove that from the door to check to be sure that it's fire-rated. Not only will it bear the visual evidence, but it will have been tested and carry the proper UL listing or the laboratory's listing number that can be requested and pulled from the manufacturer and submitted to someone who might interrogate or question it, which would be the authority having jurisdiction, your inspector or your building commissioner, whomever is responsible for it. Installation. Easy to install. We talked about the diameter, 0.62 roughly. You're going to need to drill a hole through the door. You're going to want to be careful when you're drilling a hole through the door, however, because while on this side you've got a lot of trim, On the inside, you don't have a lot of room to tear the veneer out if you're doing a wood door, or to kink or fatigue the steel if you're drilling through a metal door. You want to be very mindful when you're drilling that door to not rip the veneer. I will always score the outside face of the veneer, especially with your open grain woods, such as certainly mahogany. You'll still bump into a Luan door, and most certainly oak. Those open grain woods, heavily textured, can really just tear when you run a drill bit into it really hard. So you're going to want to be really careful, whether that be use a bit, maybe a Forstner bit, or maybe a fly bit that has those two wing cutters on the outside. There's a manufacturer that I like to use those because they score so nicely. Or maybe even run your bit backwards and score it that way so that you don't rip that out, because it's really awfully hard to repair a client's door when you've ripped it out. I've seen it. I've seen an entire 3-inch piece of veneer get lifted off the door, and maybe you can get some glue underneath it, wax paper, clamp it back down, but score the wood before you drill it. Where are you going to drill the hole? That'll be dependent on whether or not it's ADA compliant. I've seen code that tells us it's not to exceed 43 inch from the finished floor to the center line. 60 inch would be very standard for a non-ADA compliant mandatory opening. But if you're putting this on your house, put it where your users will be most successful using it. You might have a shorter member of your family. I've seen homes that have 2 viewers installed. Well, you kind of ask why, and you say, well, Grandma moved in with us 5 years ago and she couldn't see outside because she's itty bitty, she's short. So you'll see that. So install it where it's appropriate if it's not an application that you have to be under mandatory compliance with ADA regulations. If you have a square edge door, really nothing to worry about. We've talked about your height. Go to the center of the door. That's where they would normally be installed. I have seen viewers installed not in the center of the door for a particular reason, but in the center of the door. And if you have a square edge door, you can hook your tape measure on from both sides of the door and no problem. However, if your door is not square edged, and it's a very high likelihood that it's not, and it's beveled, be mindful that when you put your tape measure on the outside of that door and mark it, and then you go to the inside and mark it from the same location, now you're off, because that's a beveled edge. And that bevel is actually 1/8 of an inch for every 2 inches in thickness. So because your door is probably 1 3/4 inches, your dimension difference is not going to be quite 1/8 of an inch, but very close. You will get a different dimension, and if you were to drill halfway through the door on either side, those holes are not going to meet. Compensate for that. It's about 1/8 of an inch, just ever so slightly less. It's also, that bevel is also known as 3 degree, but 3 degrees is a bit harder to understand, of course. At least it is for me. So 1/8 of an inch for every 2 inches in thickness is how that dimension is going to differ. What I do realistically is I will mark my hole, and I will take 1/8 of an inch 6-inch jobbers type drill bit, or actually it's called an extension, an aircraft extension, but a 6-inch. And I'm practiced at it. I'll drill straight through the door, and I'll come through the outside, and it's going to push that veneer out, but it's only going to push it out ever so slightly. Once I've got my hole marked, I will then use my specialty bit to score the outside and do that on both sides, and I'll just simply then drill through the door without any trouble. And that's how I do it. I don't see a reason to mark on both sides of the door unless you are not going to be drilling straight and you're going to be really off by the time you get through the door. At that point, you'll want to measure from both sides. And by all means, double check your measurements. Measure twice, cut once is the, of course, adage we've all heard, because it's awfully hard to repair a misdrilled hole for a door viewer without going to a larger door viewer. Very nice fit and finish, excellent quality glass lens, UL listed. Finally, there's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Deltana products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. If you have any questions on the Deltana 55211 UL 26D UL listed door viewer, or any other Deltana product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.